Welcome to another video on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. When it comes to event streaming and messaging, two of the most popular choices are Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar. Both Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar are open source messaging and event streaming platforms which are quite popular in market, and they are being used for different use cases, and they serve the purpose of a high throughput, low latency and highly scalable solution for event streaming and messaging. However, this is always a very popular question in the minds of people, especially in the beginners, that what are the key differences between Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar, because you can decide which one suits well to your use cases only once you are well aware of the key differences between the two. So in this video, I'll be covering important basic differences between Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar. And based on this video, you will have a better understanding for your specific use cases that which of these products can best suit. In general, if we talk about Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar, both of them are champions for data streaming and messaging. Streaming and messaging is basically a requirement in most of event-driven architecture-based applications, microservice architecture, as well as IoT and other type of situations or other projects where certain data in the form of events needs to be transferred from the producers to the consumers, or from the publishers to the subscribers. Whenever there is a requirement like this for messaging or event streaming, then stream processing applications or products to be used in middle of the producers and subscribers becomes a crucial decision. Choosing a right application which serves the purpose in the desired manner and fulfills the use case is very crucial. So if we talk about Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar, both are open source, both are quite popular, and both are serving the purpose of event streaming platform as well as messaging. But both technologies differ with various aspects, and they have their own technological differences, as well as the way that both function also differ. Although there are many similarities as well, because the principal mechanism is still same, but behind the scene and underlying architecture and the methodologies being followed in Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar vary. So that's what we are going to discuss at a high level in this video. So the first basic difference that we will talk about is the inception of the two. Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar, as I mentioned, are both open source, but initially both of them were created for some specific purposes by two different companies. And both these companies are big names. Apache Kafka was originally created or implemented by LinkedIn for their own use cases, and later it was announced as an open source under the Apache license. And if we talk about Apache Pulsar, it is a brainchild of Yahoo. Yahoo created it for their own personal use cases or their own specific requirements, but subsequently it was also declared as open source. So this is not a difference, but it's a difference in terms of the way the two incepted. Now, if we talk from the architecture point of view, the two applications, the major difference between the two and similarities are also clear, that the key architectural components in case of Apache Kafka are producers which are going to produce the message, or they are also called publishers, and there are brokers which are going to store the data, which are going to do the basic all the key requirements as part of the message processor or event processor. And then we have Zookeeper. Why I put asterisk on Zookeeper is basically because Zookeeper, which is maintaining the whole broker cluster, and also it's responsible for management and coordination of all those brokers, as well as it is containing all the metadata. But in future, the latest with the Kafka 4.0 and onwards, there will be no more Zookeeper available. Rather, this functionality will also be delegated or utilized within the brokers through a different mechanism. And then we have consumers which are going to consume the messages, and then we have topics. So basically, producers produce the message, they send to a topic, then topics are partitioned into multiple partitions, and from there messages are consumed by the consumers. So these are some of the key components or key elements of Kafka architecture in a Kafka cluster. Although there are some more nitty-gritties, but those are already separately described and discussed in another video. I will put the link in the description as well for that video. But if we talk about Apache Pulsar, now you see some similarities. Here also we have producers, we have brokers, we have zookeeper, and as I mentioned, in case of Kafka, zookeeper is going to be removed. So technically speaking, from 4.0 onwards, there will be no more zookeeper in case of Kafka, but zookeeper will still remain if we talk about Apache Pulsar. And then we have bookkeeper. So this bookkeeper is another additional element or additional component if we talk about Pulsar, because in case of Apache Pulsar, storage is segregated or decoupled, and bookkeeper with the bookies under that are responsible for storing the data. And then we have consumers, we have topics and partitions similar to what we discussed in Kafka. So here from the architectural components point of view, most of the things are similar between Kafka and Pulsar, but there are a little difference in terms of storage as well as in terms of functionality that we will discuss further in the subsequent differences. So if we talk about the mechanism used for storing the data, in case of Apache Kafka, we have distributed commit logs. We have commit logs where data is stored in a sequential manner with the offset mechanism. This data is then pulled by the consumers, and it is distributed in nature because we have Kafka cluster where we have multiple brokers, and then those under the topic we have partitions, and those partitions can be distributed among multiple brokers. But if we talk about Apache Pulsar, the storage mechanism in Apache Pulsar is significantly different than Apache Kafka. Here we have a tiered storage with bookkeeper under which we have bookies, and the data is segmented. So different segments are created, and then those segments are separately stored using the bookkeeper, which is a separate component. So in a way, this makes a major difference between Apache Kafka and Apache Pulsar in the way data is retained or data is stored. And in case of Kafka, this distributed commit log, this can significantly grow in size if there is a different retention policy or specific customized retention policy is not used, and this can lead to some issues in terms of performance as well. But when we talk about Apache Pulsar here, this tiered storage mechanism significantly improves the performance as well and the way data is stored. Although there are various other options as well, and customization and changes that you can opt for in Kafka as well to deal with this scenario. But in general, if we talk about this, in my personal understanding, Apache Pulsar deals the data storage in far better manner compared to Apache Kafka. After this, another key difference between Kafka and Pulsar is the way consumers are going to consume the messages. Once messages are there in the commit logs in case of Kafka, or in the tiered storage in case of Apache Pulsar, then consumers who are interested in those messages are going to pick the message from those particular topics. But in case of Kafka, it is a pull-based mechanism where consumers are going to poll for the messages of their interest, and then they will be pulling the message. But contrary to this, in case of Apache Pulsar, we have a push based mechanism based on the subscriptions. So those who are subscribed to a certain topic, messages are going to be pushed to those consumers. So in this way, the network traffic is significantly reduced compared to Apache Kafka, as there is no continuous polling going on between the consumers and the cluster. Then another key difference between Pulsar and Kafka is the way multi-tenancy and geo-replication is achieved. If we talk about Apache Pulsar, multi-tenancy and geo-replication is available built-in or by default. Multi-tenancy with multi-tenancy in the same particular cluster, there can be multiple tenants, and then there's a separate mechanism used by which these multiple tenants can use that cluster. And then there we have geo replication, which improves the fault tolerance and availability, because in different geographical zones data is replicated and made available to the consumers. And if we talk about Apache Kafka, by default, multi-tenancy and geo-replication is not available, and you have to perform certain additional steps like mirroring, etc. And only then you can achieve this type of functionality in Apache Kafka. So from this perspective, these are some of the salient features and additional features, I must say, in Apache Pulsar, which make it a bit better than Apache Kafka in certain cases. Then last but not least, if we talk about the community, active community and the documentation, as well as available online resources, forums, blogs, and learning options. In this case, I will weight Apache Kafka a bit higher than Apache Pulsar for the obvious reason that Kafka is in the market for quite long, and that's why it has a better community, better support, better documentation available, online resources available. And if you talk about learning as well as hiring the resources, you can find Kafka resources much easier. You will find plenty of help tutorials, help material. Documentation is quite rich in terms of its content. The learning curve for Kafka is significantly lower. But if we talk about Apache Pulsar, although it also maintains now a good rich set of documentation as well as community is growing, but it is comparatively newer in the market compared to Kafka. So in that way, you will not find that much of documentation, that much of help resources or community based guidelines as you get in case of Apache Kafka. And then if we talk about connectors which are available to connect to different applications in Kafka, if you find hundreds or maybe thousands of connectors, then in Pulsar you will find significantly lesser than that, maybe dozens of connectors to connect to different applications. So the reason is obvious that Kafka, being more mature in the market for longer period of time, is already doing more, and it is more popular and more widely adopted compared to Pulsar. And then if we talk about the professional support, a proprietary support, we already have Confluent Kafka, which is a paid version, or a professional, if you want professional support, and it is managed instead of open source. If you go with that type of option, you have that a very good popular option, Confluent Kafka. But if we talk about Pulsar, you will not find that much number of vendors providing this type of professional support. Although we have this available in certain applications, like we have Pulsar in TIPCO, but in general, if we talk about Kafka, you will find plenty of options compared to Pulsar. Other than this, there are many other differences and many other similarities between the two. Just as an example, if you talk about security features, authentication and authorization mechanism, both Kafka and Pulsar have quite stronger security, and both of them are providing rich set of options to secure the data. But in general, in my opinion, Pulsar is giving you a bit of more options compared to Kafka. So summing it all, in general, if we talk about the two, both are very good options for event streaming and messaging. Both have their own pros and cons, but in general, excellent options, both of these. So it depends on your use cases, your specific requirements, and then you can decide which one serves better for your requirements. I have already created several other videos regarding Kafka, ActiveMQ, RabbitMQ, and other similar technologies, other integration technologies. So you can visit my website tutorialspedia.com to learn more about all these concepts, all these applications, or all these tools. And you can also subscribe to this Tutorialspedia YouTube channel, as there are plenty of videos around different integration technologies that might be of some help to you. That's it from this video. I hope this information that has been conveyed in this video is useful for you. If you have any question, any feedback, you can always write in the comment section. Thank you very much.